2 years had passed since Emily Carter became Emily Moretti, and the wedding ring on her finger still caught the morning light streaming through the renovated cafe windows. The gold band was simple, elegant, a stark contrast to the elaborate jewelry that adorned the wives of other powerful men in Logan's world. But Emily had chosen simplicity, and Logan had understood. He always understood. Carter's Coffee had become more than a neighborhood fixture. It was a landmark, a place where people from all walks of life gathered, drawn not just by the exceptional coffee, but by the warmth that seemed to radiate from its very walls. Sophie's murals had evolved too, covering nearly every surface with vibrant scenes of Brooklyn life, coffee beans dancing with city lights, steam curling into the shapes of dreams. Emily stood behind the counter, her movements practiced and graceful as she prepared the morning rush. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, tendrils escaping to frame her face. She had grown more confident over the years, her posture straighter, her smile brighter. The woman who once trembled at midnight knocks now commanded respect from suppliers, charmed food critics, and managed a staff of 12. The bell above the door chimed, and Emily looked up to see Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who had been coming to the cafe since before the fire. Her weathered hands shook slightly as she approached the counter, but her eyes were sharp with intelligence. "The usual, Mrs. Patterson?" Emily asked, already reaching for a small cup. "Actually, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice lowered conspiratorially, "I wanted to ask you something. My grandson is getting married next month, and I was wondering if you'd cater the reception. Small affair, maybe 60 people. Emily's chest warmed. Over the past 2 years, Carter's Coffee had expanded beyond just serving drinks. They now catered events, hosted book clubs, and even offered cooking classes on weekends. It was everything Emily had dreamed of when she first took over the cafe, and more. "I'd be honored," Emily replied, pulling out her calendar. "Let's talk dates." As she scheduled the appointment, Emily's mind wandered to Logan. He had left early that morning, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead before slipping out into the pre-dawn darkness. His business still demanded long hours, dangerous meetings, and difficult decisions. But he had kept his promise. The violence had decreased significantly since Duca's fall. Logan ran his empire with a different philosophy now, one that prioritized negotiation over bloodshed, loyalty over fear. The morning rush continued, a steady stream of regulars and newcomers. Emily moved through the familiar rhythm, greeting customers by name, remembering their orders, asking about their families. This was her kingdom, built not on power or intimidation, but on connection and community. Around 10 o'clock, when the breakfast crowd had thinned, the door opened again. Emily looked up, expecting another regular, but instead saw a woman she didn't recognize. The stranger was elegant, probably in her 40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a designer handbag that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her smile was polite but calculating, the kind of expression Emily had learned to recognize in Logan's world. "Mrs. Moretti?" the woman asked, approaching the counter with measured steps. Emily's guard immediately went up. Very few people called her by her married name at the cafe. Most customers still knew her as Emily Carter, the barista who had run the place for years. "I'm Emily," she replied carefully. "Can I help you?" The woman's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "My name is Victoria Sterling. I represent certain business interests in the city. I was hoping we could chat." Emily's blood chilled. She glanced around the cafe, noting the positions of her staff and customers. Marcus, one of Logan's men who worked security but dressed like a regular customer, caught her eye from his corner table. He was already alert, his hand moving subtly toward his jacket. "I'm afraid I'm quite busy," Emily said, keeping her voice steady. "Perhaps you could make an appointment for another time." Victoria's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Oh, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. It concerns your husband's recent activities." The words hung in the air like a threat. Emily felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same sensation she'd experienced during the darkest days of the war with Duca. She had hoped those days were behind them. "Perhaps we could speak privately," Victoria continued, gesturing toward one of the back booths. "It really is quite important." Against her better judgment, Emily found herself nodding. She called to Sarah, her assistant manager, indicating she'd be taking a break. Then she followed Victoria to the secluded booth, Marcus discreetly positioning himself at a nearby table. Victoria slid into the booth with practiced grace, placing her purse carefully beside her. Emily sat across from her, every muscle tense. "You have a lovely place here," Victoria began, looking around appreciatively. "I can see why Logan is so protective of it. So protective of you." "What do you want?" Emily asked bluntly. Victoria's mask slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. "Direct, I like that. Very well. I represent the Sterling family. We have certain concerns about your husband's recent expansion into our territory." Emily's heart sank. She had hoped the territorial wars were finished, that Logan's victory over Duca had brought lasting peace. Apparently, she had been naive. "The Sterlings control the port operations on the east side," Victoria continued. "For 3 generations, we've maintained that territory without interference. But in the past 6 months, Logan has been encroaching." "I don't know anything about Logan's business," Emily said, which was partially true. Logan had kept most of his work separate from their home life, sharing only what she needed to know for her own safety. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "Oh, but you do know something, don't you, Emily? You know that your husband loves you more than his empire. More than his life, even." The words were spoken with such certainty that Emily's blood ran cold. This woman had done her homework. She understood exactly where Logan was vulnerable. "Here's what's going to happen," Victoria continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Logan is going to withdraw from the eastern ports. He's going to return every contract, every connection, every dollar of revenue. And he's going to do it within the week." "And if he doesn't?" Emily asked, though she dreaded the answer. Victoria's smile returned, sharp as a blade. "Then accidents happen, fires start, people disappear. You know how these things go, don't you, Emily? After all, you've been through it before." The threat was clear, and Emily's hands began to tremble beneath the table. She thought of Sophie, now in her senior year of high school, applying to art schools. She thought of her staff, her customers, the life she had rebuilt from ashes. "You're threatening innocent people," Emily said, her voice barely controlled. "I'm protecting my family's interests," Victoria replied coolly, "just as Logan would do for his. The question is, how much are you willing to risk for territory that doesn't even belong to you?" Before Emily could respond, Victoria slid a business card across the table. "Tell your husband to call me within 24 hours. We'll arrange the details of his withdrawal." "And Emily?" Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. "This conversation stays between us. If Logan brings his army to my door, innocent people will indeed suffer. But they won't be my people." With that, Victoria Sterling walked out of the cafe, leaving Emily sitting alone in the booth. Her world suddenly tilted off its axis once again. Emily spent the rest of the day in a daze, going through the motions of running the cafe while her mind raced. She debated calling Logan immediately, but Victoria's warning about keeping the conversation secret held her back. She needed time to think, to process what this meant for their carefully rebuilt life. When evening came and the last customer left, Emily found herself alone with her thoughts. She sat in the same booth where Victoria had delivered her ultimatum, staring at the business card. The elegant script read simply, "Victoria Sterling, Sterling Enterprises," followed by a phone number. The bell above the door chimed, and Emily looked up to see Logan entering. Even after 2 years of marriage, the sight of him still made her breath catch. His dark hair was slightly mussed from the wind, his tie loosened after a long day. But his eyes, those piercing blue eyes that had first drawn her in, were as sharp as ever. "Evening, Mrs. Moretti," he said with a smile, using the title that never failed to make her heart skip. "You're early," Emily observed, glancing at the clock. It was only 8:30. Logan shrugged, approaching her table. "Finished business sooner than expected. Thought I'd surprise my wife with dinner." He leaned down to kiss her, and Emily tried to respond normally. But Logan knew her too well. He pulled back, his eyes searching her face. "What's wrong?" he asked, settling into the booth across from her. Emily's resolve crumbled. She had never been able to hide anything from Logan, not since that first night when he'd seen right through her defenses. She slid Victoria's business card across the table. "Someone came to see me today." Logan's expression shifted immediately, his body going rigid. He picked up the card and Emily saw his jaw clench as he read the name. "Victoria Sterling," he said quietly. "What did she want?" Emily recounted the entire conversation, watching as Logan's face grew darker with each detail. By the time she finished, his hands were clenched into fists on the table. "She threatened you," Logan said, his voice deadly calm. "She threatened our life. Logan, she said, if you bring your men, innocent people will suffer. Maybe we should consider—" "No." Logan's voice cut through her words like a blade. "Emily, you don't understand. The Sterlings aren't just another crime family. They're old money, connected to politicians, judges, police commissioners. They've been untouchable for decades because they don't get their hands dirty. They hire people like us to do it for them." Emily's stomach lurched. "Then maybe giving them what they want would be signing our death warrant," Logan finished. "Emily, if I show weakness now, every family in the city will come for us. They'll see that all they have to do is threaten you, and I'll roll over. We'll never be safe." Emily stared at him, seeing the terrible calculation in his eyes. This was the burden he carried, the weight of decisions that had no good outcomes. She reached across the table, covering his clenched fists with her hands. "Then what do we do?" she asked softly. Logan's eyes met hers, and she saw the storm brewing there. "We fight, but not the way Victoria expects. She thinks she knows me, knows how I operate. But she's been watching the old Logan, the one who inherited his father's throne. She doesn't know what I've become." "What have you become?" Emily whispered. Logan's hand turned palm up, intertwining their fingers. "A man with something worth protecting. A man who's learned that the smartest battles are the ones you never have to fight." Over the next 3 days, Logan disappeared into his work with an intensity Emily hadn't seen since the war with Duca. He left before dawn and returned after midnight, his clothes expensive but his eyes exhausted. Emily tried to maintain normalcy at the cafe, but she found herself jumping at shadows, scrutinizing every new customer. On the 4th morning, Emily woke to find Logan sitting in the chair beside their bed, fully dressed in his customary dark suit. His expression was grim but determined. "It's finished," he said simply. Emily sat up, her heart pounding. "What's finished?" Logan pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. The headline read, "Sterling Enterprises under federal investigation for money laundering, tax evasion." Emily's eyes widened as she scanned the article. The investigation was comprehensive, involving multiple agencies. Victoria Sterling had been arrested at her penthouse apartment the previous evening. Assets were frozen, contracts suspended, employees questioned. "How did you—" Emily began. "Victoria Sterling made a mistake," Logan explained. "She assumed I was like her, that I won everything through intimidation and violence. But I've spent the past 2 years building different kinds of relationships, legitimate ones. I have friends in the DA's office now, contacts in the FBI who owe me favors for information I've provided on other cases." Emily stared at him in amazement. "You had her investigated?" "I had her destroyed," Logan said matter-of-factly. "Emily, everything in that article is true. The Sterlings have been laundering money for decades, avoiding taxes, bribing officials. I just made sure the right people knew about it." "But won't this cause problems for you? If the FBI is involved?" Logan shook his head. "I've been clean for 2 years, Emily. Completely legitimate. My lawyers have made sure of it. The businesses I run now are legal, profitable, and transparent. The old empire is gone." Emily felt dizzy with the implications. "You gave it all up?" "I transformed it," Logan corrected. "Construction companies, restaurants, import businesses, everything legitimate. I kept the loyalty, the connections, the respect. But I ditched the illegal operations." "Why didn't you tell me?" Logan's expression softened. "Because I wanted to be sure it would work. I couldn't promise you a safe life if I wasn't certain I could deliver it." Emily threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. She had married Logan knowing he was dangerous, accepting that their life would always carry risks. But he had been quietly, methodically removing those risks without her even knowing. Victoria Sterling underestimated what love could make a man become. Logan murmured against her hair. She thought threatening you would make me weak. Instead, it reminded me why I changed everything in the first place. The weeks that followed brought a strange kind of peace to their lives. With the Sterling threat eliminated and Logan's business operations fully legitimate, Emily found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't since their marriage began. The cafe thrived. Logan came home at reasonable hours, and for the first time they began talking about the future in concrete terms. One evening, as they sat in their apartment above the cafe, Logan brought up a subject that made Emily's heart skip. "I've been thinking," he said, setting down his coffee cup, "about expanding the family." Emily looked up from her book, meeting his eyes. They had discussed children before, but always in abstract terms, someday conversations that felt distant and theoretical. "Expanding how?" she asked, though she already knew. Logan's smile was soft, vulnerable in a way that still surprised her. "A baby, Emily. Our baby." The words hung in the air between them, full of possibility and hope. Emily felt her chest tighten with emotion. "Are you sure we're ready?" she asked. "Your work, the cafe." "We'll adjust," Logan said firmly. "Emily, I've spent my entire life building things for other people. My father's legacy, the family business, obligations I inherited. But this, us, a child, that would be something I'm building for love." Emily set her book aside and moved closer to him on the couch. "It wouldn't be easy. Running the cafe while pregnant, raising a child in this neighborhood. We'll figure it out," Logan interrupted, taking her hands. "We always do." Emily searched his eyes and saw the same determination that had carried them through fires, threats, and territorial wars. But now it was focused on something beautiful instead of dangerous. "Yes," she whispered, and Logan's face lit up like sunrise. 6 months later, Emily stood in the cafe's bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Her hands shook as she gripped the plastic stick, joy and terror warring in her chest. She was going to be a mother. Logan was going to be a father. They were going to bring a child into the world they had fought so hard to build. When she emerged from the bathroom, Logan was waiting in the hallway, his face anxious. She didn't need to speak. The expression on her face told him everything. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around the narrow hallway while she laughed and cried simultaneously. When he finally set her down, his eyes were bright with tears. "We're having a baby," he said wonderfully. "We're having a baby," Emily confirmed. That night, they lay in bed talking about names, nursery colors, and all the things they wanted to teach their child. Logan's hand rested on Emily's still flat stomach, his touch gentle and protective. "They'll never know the world we came from," he said quietly. "They'll grow up with safety, stability, love." Emily covered his hand with hers. "They'll know their parents fought for that safety. That's a gift, too." As the months passed, Emily's pregnancy progressed smoothly. The cafe staff rallied around her, taking on extra duties as her energy waned. Sophie, now a freshman at Parsons School of Design, came home on weekends to help paint the nursery and plan for her future role as aunt. Logan was protective to the point of being overbearing. He hired additional security, insisted on driving Emily to all her medical appointments, and somehow managed to be home for dinner most nights despite running multiple businesses. Emily found his hovering both annoying and endearing. "You do realize women have been having babies for thousands of years without round-the-clock protection details," she teased one evening as Logan checked the locks on their apartment door for the 3rd time. "Not my woman carrying my baby," he replied seriously, and Emily's heart melted despite her exasperation. On a crisp October morning, when Emily was 7 months pregnant, she was arranging flowers in the cafe's window display when a familiar sensation made her pause. Not pain exactly, but a tightening across her abdomen that hadn't been there before. She straightened carefully, one hand resting on her rounded belly. The baby had been active all morning, more restless than usual. Emily had attributed it to the extra coffee she'd had at breakfast, but now she wondered if something else was happening. The tightening came again, stronger this time, and Emily gripped the windowsill for support. She glanced around the cafe, noting that the morning rush was in full swing. Sarah was at the espresso machine. The baristas were busy with orders, and customers filled most of the tables. Emily tried to take a deep breath, telling herself it was probably just Braxton Hicks contractions. She was still 2 months from her due date. It was too early for real labor. But as she made her way back toward the counter, another contraction hit, this one strong enough to make her gasp. A customer at a nearby table looked up with concern. "Are you all right, dear?" the elderly woman asked. "Fine," Emily managed, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She made it to the back office and closed the door, pulling out her phone to call Logan. The call went straight to voicemail. He was probably in a meeting, his phone turned off as it always was during important business discussions. Emily tried to stay calm, timing the contractions as her doctor had instructed. They were coming every 7 to 8 minutes, lasting about 30 seconds each. Too regular and too frequent for false labor. She called her obstetrician's office and explained her symptoms to the nurse. "Mrs. Moretti," the nurse said gently, "I think you should come in to be evaluated. Better safe than sorry." Emily's heart pounded. She called Logan again and again got voicemail. She left a message explaining the situation and asking him to meet her at the hospital. Then she grabbed her purse and the hospital bag Logan had insisted they keep packed since her 6th month. Sarah looked up in alarm when Emily emerged from the office with the bag. "Emily, what's wrong?" she asked, abandoning the espresso machine. "I think the baby might be coming early," Emily said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Can you handle things here? I'm going to the hospital." Sarah's eyes widened, but she nodded immediately. "Of course. Do you need someone to drive you?" Emily shook her head. The contractions were still manageable, and the hospital was only 10 minutes away. "I'll be fine. Just call Logan if you see him before he gets my message." The drive to the hospital felt surreal. Emily found herself talking to the baby, asking them to wait just a little longer to give Logan time to get there. She had imagined this moment so many times, always with Logan beside her, his steady presence anchoring her through the fear and excitement. At the hospital, the medical staff confirmed what Emily already knew. She was in active labor, too advanced to stop. The baby was coming, ready or not. Emily was settled into a labor and delivery room, hooked up to monitors that tracked both her contractions and the baby's heartbeat. The steady beeping was reassuring, but she felt desperately alone without Logan. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages. Logan, frantic with worry, unable to understand why she wasn't answering. Sophie, who had gotten the news from Sarah and was driving home from school. Sarah, providing updates from the cafe. Emily answered Logan's calls when she could, between contractions that were growing stronger and closer together. "I'm on my way." Logan's voice was tight with anxiety. "Traffic is insane, but I'll be there in 20 minutes. The baby's not waiting 20 minutes. Emily panted as another contraction peaked. "Logan, they're coming now." She heard him curse in Italian, something he only did when truly upset. "Emily, listen to me. You're the strongest woman I know. You survived fire, threats, everything life threw at us. You can do this." "Not without you," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm with you," Logan said fiercely. "Every breath you take, every push, I'm right there with you. Feel me with you, Emily." The nurse took the phone as Emily's contractions intensified beyond her ability to speak. Emily could hear Logan's voice, distant but determined, talking her through the pain even from miles away. When the doctor announced that it was time to push, Emily closed her eyes and imagined Logan's hand in hers, his voice in her ear, his strength flowing through her. She pushed with everything she had, driven by love and determination and the knowledge that their child was about to enter the world. "One more push, Emily," the doctor encouraged. "I can see the head." Emily bore down with a fierce cry, and suddenly the room filled with a new sound. A baby's cry, loud and strong and absolutely perfect. "Congratulations," the doctor said, lifting a tiny, red-faced infant. "You have a son." Emily sobbed with relief and joy as they placed the baby on her chest. He was small but healthy, his cry vigorous, his tiny fists waving indignantly at being evicted from his warm cocoon. "He's beautiful," Emily whispered, touching his downy head with one finger. "Hello, little one. I'm your mama." The baby's cries subsided at the sound of her voice, and Emily felt her heart expand beyond anything she'd ever imagined. This was love at its purest, most powerful form. The labor room door burst open and Logan rushed in, still in his business suit but disheveled from his frantic journey. His eyes went immediately to Emily and the baby, and his face crumpled with emotion. "I'm sorry," he said, crossing to her side in 2 long strides. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here." "You were here," Emily said, reaching for his hand with her free one. "I felt you with me the whole time." Logan leaned down to kiss her forehead, then gazed in wonder at their son. The baby's eyes were open, dark and unfocused, but alert, as if he were taking inventory of this strange new world. "He's perfect," Logan said in amazement. "He's absolutely perfect." The nurse took the baby briefly to clean him up and perform the standard newborn procedures, then returned him wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Logan held out his arms tentatively. "Are you sure?" he asked Emily. "I've never held a baby before." Emily smiled, exhausted but radiating happiness. "Neither have I. We'll learn together." Logan took his son with the same careful precision he brought to everything important in his life. The baby looked impossibly small in his father's large hands, but Logan held him with perfect confidence, as if he'd been born for this moment. "What should we call him?" Emily asked. They had discussed names for months without reaching a final decision. But looking at their son now, one name seemed to fit perfectly. "Michael," Logan said quietly. "After my grandfather, the only member of my family who believed in doing the right thing." Emily nodded. "Michael Moretti." "Mickey, Mickey," Logan repeated, and the name sounded right in his voice. The next few hours passed in a blur of visitors, medical checks, and the overwhelming reality of becoming parents. Sophie arrived with flowers and tears, immediately smitten with her nephew. Sarah brought coffee from the cafe and updates on how smoothly everything was running without Emily. Logan's men appeared at appropriate intervals, offering congratulations and discreet security. But in the quiet moments between visitors, Emily and Logan simply stared at their son in wonder. He slept peacefully in Emily's arms, occasionally making soft sounds that melted their hearts. "I can't believe he's really ours," Emily whispered. Logan stroked the baby's cheek with one finger. "He's going to have everything we never had. Safety, stability, parents who chose each other and chose him. And he'll have the cafe," Emily added. "All those people who already love him without even meeting him. Mrs. Patterson has already knitted 3 blankets. Logan laughed softly. "He's going to be spoiled rotten." "By his father most of all," Emily teased. "Absolutely," Logan agreed without shame. As evening fell and the hospital grew quieter, Logan settled into the uncomfortable chair beside Emily's bed. Mickey was sleeping in the bassinet between them, his tiny chest rising and falling with perfect rhythm. "I keep thinking about that first night," Emily said sleepily, "when you knocked on the cafe door asking for one last coffee." Logan reached across to squeeze her hand. "Best decision I ever made." "You changed everything," Emily continued. "Not just for me, but for Sophie, for the whole neighborhood. You proved that people can transform, that the past doesn't have to define the future." Logan was quiet for a long moment, watching their son sleep. "I used to think power came from control, from making people fear you. But real power comes from love. It comes from having something worth protecting, worth changing for." Emily's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion finally claiming her. "I love you, Logan Moretti. I love you too, Emily Moretti. Both of you." In the days that followed, Emily and Logan settled into the overwhelming reality of parenthood. Mickey was a good baby, sleeping in reasonable stretches and nursing well, but the constant demands of caring for a newborn left them both exhausted. Logan surprised Emily by taking to fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He learned to change diapers with military precision, mastered the art of the 3 a.m. feeding, and could soothe Mickey's crying with a low humming that seemed to work like magic. "Where did you learn to do that?" Emily asked one night, watching Logan pace the nursery with Mickey against his shoulder. "I didn't learn it," Logan replied quietly. I remember wanting someone to hold me like this when I was afraid. I remember wishing someone would make me feel safe." Emily's heart ached for the little boy Logan had been, growing up in a world of violence and conditional love. But that little boy had grown into a man determined to give his own son everything he'd been denied. The cafe became even more of a community center after Mickey's arrival. Customers brought gifts, offered babysitting services, and generally treated the baby like he belonged to all of them. Emily found herself able to work shorter days, with Logan taking over Mickey's care during her busiest hours. One afternoon, when Mickey was 3 months old, Emily was nursing him in the back office when Sarah knocked on the door. "Emily, there's someone here to see you," Sarah said carefully. "She says she's from social services." Emily's blood chilled. She quickly finished feeding Mickey and handed him to Sarah before going out to meet the visitor. The woman was middle-aged, professional-looking, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She introduced herself as Janet Morrison from the Department of Children and Family Services. "Mrs. Moretti," she said, "I hope you don't mind the unannounced visit. We received a complaint about the environment at your business and wanted to do a routine check." Emily's mind raced. A complaint? About the cafe? "What kind of complaint?" she asked carefully. Janet consulted her tablet. "Someone reported that your establishment is frequented by unsavory characters. There were concerns about whether it's an appropriate environment for a child." Emily felt her cheeks burn with anger. She could guess who might have made such a report. Even with Victoria Sterling in federal prison, the Sterling family still had connections. People who might want to cause trouble for the Morettis. "Ms. Morrison," Emily said, forcing her voice to remain calm, "I'd be happy to show you around. As you can see, this is a family-friendly coffee shop. We host book clubs, art classes for children, and community events." Janet spent the next hour touring the cafe, speaking with customers and staff, and reviewing the business licenses and safety certifications Emily provided. She seemed genuinely impressed by the warmth of the community atmosphere and the obvious care Emily had put into creating a welcoming space. When Logan arrived for his usual late afternoon visit with Mickey, Emily introduced him to Janet. She watched carefully for Janet's reaction, knowing that Logan's reputation might precede him even in legitimate circles. But Logan was at his most charming, answering Janet's questions about his work, construction and import businesses, his relationship with Emily, and his commitment to providing a stable home for their son. He was professional, articulate, and completely convincing as a reformed man building a legitimate life. After Janet left, promising that her report would reflect the positive environment she'd observed, Emily and Logan discussed the incident. "Someone's still trying to cause problems for us," Emily said, bouncing Mickey gently as he fussed. Logan's jaw tightened. "I'll find out who made the complaint. There are ways to trace these things." "And then what?" Emily asked, fixing him with a steady gaze. Logan met her eyes and sighed. "Then nothing. We're better than that now. We'll let our life speak for itself." Emily smiled, proud of how far he'd come. The old Logan might have responded to the complaint with intimidation or worse, but the man holding their son was different, tempered by love and responsibility. As Mickey grew from infant to toddler, life settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Emily managed the cafe with the help of her expanded staff. Logan ran his legitimate businesses with the same efficiency he'd once brought to less legal enterprises, and their son grew into a happy, curious child who charmed everyone he met. Mickey's first word was coffee, which delighted Emily and horrified Logan. "He spends too much time in the cafe," Logan complained, though he was secretly pleased when Mickey clapped his hands at the sound of the espresso machine. "He's learning the family business," Emily replied, letting Mickey play with measuring spoons while she worked behind the counter. By his second birthday, Mickey was a fixture at Carter's Coffee, with his own little table and chair where he would help Emily by sorting coffee beans or drawing pictures for the bulletin board. Customers doted on him, and Sophie created a special mural in the children's corner, featuring Mickey as a tiny barista. It was during Mickey's second birthday party, held in the cafe after hours with all their friends and chosen family present, that Emily realized how completely their lives had been transformed. Looking around the room, she saw Logan laughing with Mrs. Patterson while Mickey sat on his shoulders, Sophie showing off her latest artwork to admiring customers turned friends, and Sarah organizing games for the few other children present. This was the life she'd dreamed of, but never dared hope for. A life built on love, community, and the daily choice to create something beautiful from whatever materials they were given. Late that night, after the party was cleaned up and Mickey was asleep in his crib, Emily and Logan sat on their couch, sharing a cup of coffee. It was decaf, a concession to Emily's evening routine, but it was made with the same care and attention she brought to every cup served in the cafe. "Do you ever miss it?" Emily asked quietly. "The excitement, the adrenaline, the feeling of commanding an empire." Logan considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the clarity," he said finally. "When your world is built on power and fear, the rules are simple. You're either strong enough to survive or you're not." He paused, taking a sip of coffee. "But I don't miss the cost. The constant vigilance, the loneliness, the knowledge that everyone around you is either afraid of you or trying to use you." Emily curled closer to him on the couch. "And now?" Logan's arm tightened around her. "Now I have something worth more than any empire. I have a family that chose me, not because of my power or my money, but because of who I am when all of that is stripped away." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the city settling into sleep. In a few hours, Emily would be downstairs preparing for the morning rush, Logan would be heading to his office, and Mickey would wake up ready to charm everyone he encountered. It was an ordinary life, built from extraordinary choices and the daily decision to love each other despite their complicated past. And for Emily, it was everything she'd ever wanted. "Logan," she said softly, "do you think Mickey will understand someday? About where we came from, what we went through to build this?" Logan was quiet for a long moment, his hand absently stroking her hair. "I think he'll understand that love changes everything, that people can choose to become better than they were. And I think he'll know that he was worth every risk we took, every battle we fought." Emily smiled, thinking of their son sleeping peacefully upstairs, safe and loved, and completely unaware of the complicated history that had brought his parents together. "He'll know he was wanted," she said softly. As if summoned by their conversation, a soft cry echoed from upstairs. Mickey, calling out in his sleep, or perhaps sensing his parents' absence even in dreams. Emily started to rise, but Logan gently pressed her back down. "I'll get him," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Finish your coffee." Emily watched him disappear up the stairs, marveling at how naturally fatherhood had come to him. She could hear his voice through the thin walls, low and soothing, probably singing the Italian lullaby he'd learned from his grandmother, one of the few gentle memories from his childhood. The crying stopped, replaced by Mickey's delighted giggle. Logan had probably made silly faces or played the peekaboo game that never failed to amuse their son. Emily smiled, imagining the scene. Her intimidating Mafia boss husband reduced to putty by a 2-year-old with dark curls and mischievous eyes. When Logan returned, his hair was slightly mussed and there was a proud smile on his face. "He wanted to make sure we were still here," Logan explained. "Smart kid. He knows what's important." "Just like his father," Emily replied, reaching for his hand. The years that followed brought both challenges and unexpected joys. Mickey grew into a precocious child who seemed to inherit the best qualities from both parents. Emily's warmth and intuition, Logan's intelligence and determination. He was equally comfortable charming customers at the cafe and sitting quietly in Logan's office, drawing pictures while his father conducted legitimate business meetings. When Mickey turned 5, Emily discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was planned, celebrated, and considerably less dramatic than their first experience. Logan was present for every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, every moment of anticipation. Their daughter arrived on a snowy February morning, after a labor that lasted only 4 hours. Logan barely made it to the hospital in time, skidding into the parking lot as Emily's contractions reached their peak. "You couldn't wait for better weather?" he joked breathlessly as he scrubbed his hands before joining Emily in the delivery room. "Take it up with your daughter," Emily replied between pushes. "She's clearly as impatient as you are." Isabella Rose Moretti made her entrance with considerably less fuss than her brother, slipping into the world with a soft cry that sounded almost apologetic for the disruption. She was tiny, perfect, with Logan's blue eyes and a cap of dark hair that would later prove to have Emily's natural curl. Mickey was enchanted with his little sister, appointing himself her protector and entertainment committee. He would sit by her bassinet for hours, telling her elaborate stories about the cafe, the customers, and the adventures they would have when she was old enough to walk. "She's going to be trouble," Logan predicted, watching 5-year-old Mickey seriously explain to baby Isabella why she couldn't have coffee yet. "Wonder where she gets that from," Emily replied, remembering her own stubborn streak and the night she'd first opened her door to a dangerous stranger. Life settled into a new rhythm with 4 family members. The cafe continued to thrive, now with a small play area where Mickey could do his homework and Isabella could nap in her portable crib. Logan's businesses expanded, always staying firmly on the legal side but benefiting from his reputation for reliability and his extensive network of connections. The neighborhood had embraced the Morettis completely. Logan was no longer seen as the dangerous outsider, but as Emily's husband, Mickey and Isabella's father, a man who had contributed to local charities, helped struggling businesses, and somehow made the streets safer just by his presence. But their past wasn't entirely buried. On Mickey's 7th birthday, as Emily was setting up decorations in the cafe for his party, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Detective Ray Martinez had been investigating the Moretti family for years, though he'd found little concrete evidence of current illegal activity. He was a good man, Emily had learned, genuinely interested in justice rather than glory. His visits had become infrequent as Logan's legitimate transformation became undeniable, but he still checked in occasionally. "Mrs. Moretti," Detective Martinez said politely, removing his hat as he entered. "Hope I'm not interrupting the party preparations." "Not at all," Emily replied, though her stomach tightened with familiar anxiety. "Can I get you some coffee?" "That would be great, thanks." Martinez settled at the counter, his experienced eyes taking in the birthday decorations, the family photos on the walls, the obvious signs of a thriving, legitimate business. Emily prepared his usual order, black coffee, no sugar, and waited for him to explain his visit. "I'm retiring next month," Martinez said, surprising her. 25 years on the force. I wanted to stop by and, well, I wanted to tell you something." Emily raised an eyebrow, uncertain where this was heading. Martinez took a sip of coffee before continuing. "When I started investigating your husband 8 years ago, I thought I was tracking a typical crime boss. Smart, ruthless, but ultimately just another criminal who'd eventually make a mistake I could exploit." He paused, looking around the cafe with something that might have been admiration. "I was wrong," he continued. "Oh, Logan Moretti was all of those things once. But somewhere along the way, he became something else entirely. A businessman, a father, a pillar of this community. And I think you had something to do with that transformation." Emily felt her cheeks warm. Logan changed because he wanted to change. I just loved him while he figured out who he wanted to be." Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "My partner thinks I'm going soft, but I've seen enough genuinely bad men to recognize when someone has genuinely reformed. Your husband isn't just staying out of trouble. He's actively making his corner of the world better." Before Emily could respond, the door burst open and Mickey raced in, his school backpack bouncing behind him. He skidded to a stop when he saw Detective Martinez, his young face lighting up with curiosity rather than fear. "Are you here for my birthday party?" Mickey asked with 7-year-old directness. Martinez smiled, the stern expression he wore during official business softening completely. "I wouldn't want to intrude on your special day, but thank you for asking." "You should stay," Mickey insisted. "Mama made a chocolate cake and Papa promised to teach me how to make espresso." Emily found herself smiling despite the surreal nature of the situation. Her son was inviting a police detective to his birthday party, completely unaware that this man had spent years trying to find evidence against his father. "Mickey," Emily said gently, "Detective Martinez probably has other plans." But Martinez was already reaching into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small wrapped package. "Actually, I do have something for the birthday boy, if that's okay with your mother." Emily nodded, curious despite herself. Martinez handed the gift to Mickey, who tore into the wrapping paper with enthusiasm. Inside was a junior detective badge and a small magnifying glass. "Every good investigator needs the right tools," Martinez said seriously. "Maybe someday you'll help solve mysteries and help people." Mickey's eyes went wide with delight. He immediately clipped the badge to his shirt and began examining various objects in the cafe through the magnifying glass. "What do you say, Mickey?" Emily prompted. "Thank you," Mickey said, beaming. Then, with the uncomplicated generosity of childhood, he added, "You should definitely stay for cake." Martinez looked at Emily questioningly. She found herself nodding, surprising herself with the invitation. "If you don't have other plans, you're welcome to join us. It's just family and close friends." An hour later, Emily watched in amazement as Detective Martinez sat at one of the cafe tables, helping Mickey examine evidence with the magnifying glass, while Isabella babbled happily in her high chair. Logan had arrived to find the detective at his son's birthday party and had handled the situation with remarkable grace, welcoming Martinez like any other guest. "This is surreal," Sophie whispered to Emily as they watched Logan and Martinez discussing Mickey's detective skills. "5 years ago, if someone had told me Ray Martinez would be at my grandson's birthday party, I'd have checked them into a mental health facility," Emily agreed. But there was something fitting about it, too. The detective who had investigated their family had become a witness to their transformation. He had seen them at their most vulnerable and most dangerous, and now he was seeing them at their most ordinary and beautiful. As the party wound down and Martinez prepared to leave, he pulled Emily and Logan aside. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "that your file will be marked inactive when I retire. There's no ongoing investigation, no pending charges, nothing for my replacement to pursue. As far as the NYPD is concerned, the Moretti case is closed." Logan extended his hand, and Martinez shook it firmly. "Thank you," Logan said simply, "for giving us the chance to prove we'd changed." "Thank you for actually changing," Martinez replied. "It's rare in my line of work to see a story end this well." After Martinez left, Emily and Logan cleaned up the party debris while their children played in the corner. Isabella was attempting to crawl, determined to follow her big brother wherever he went, while Mickey read her a story from one of his favorite books. "I never imagined this," Emily said, watching their children together. "Any of it. The cafe, the family, Detective Martinez eating birthday cake in our living room." Logan followed her gaze to their children, his expression soft with contentment. "I used to think happiness was something other people had, something I wasn't built for. And now I think happiness is something you build, piece by piece, choice by choice, like everything else worth having." Emily leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "What do you think happens next? For us? For the kids?" Logan considered the question seriously. "Mickey will probably become either a detective or a barista, possibly both. Isabella will charm everyone she meets and likely run the city by the time she's 30. Emily laughed. "And us? We'll grow old together," Logan said matter-of-factly. "We'll watch our children become amazing adults, spoil our grandchildren, and probably still be arguing about whether Mickey should be allowed to have espresso." "Sounds perfect," Emily said. That night, after the children were asleep and the cafe was closed, Emily and Logan sat in their usual spot by the window. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of peaceful silence that spoke of safety and community rather than emptiness or fear. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Emily asked, echoing a conversation they'd had many times over the years. "Every day," Logan replied. "I think about how close I came to walking past your door. How different everything would be if I hadn't decided I needed that coffee." "What made you knock?" Emily asked. It was a question she'd never gotten a complete answer to. Logan was quiet for a long moment, his coffee growing cold in his hands. I was driving around the city trying to decide if I wanted to keep living, he said finally. I'd just come from my father's grave, and I was thinking about how empty everything felt, how tired I was of being afraid and making other people afraid. Emily's chest tightened. She had suspected that Logan's first visit hadn't been entirely random, but she'd never realized how desperate he'd been. I saw the light in your window, Logan continued. This warm, golden glow in the middle of all that darkness. And I thought, maybe there's still something beautiful in the world. Maybe I could ask for one last coffee before I decided whether to keep fighting. One last coffee, Emily repeated softly, understanding the phrase in a completely new way. One last coffee, Logan agreed. Except it wasn't the last. It was the first real moment of my new life. Emily reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. I'm glad you knocked. So am I, Logan said. Best decision I ever made. Years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes of family life. Mickey grew into a teenager who was equally comfortable discussing philosophy with customers and helping his father navigate complex business negotiations. He had inherited Logan's strategic mind, but tempered it with Emily's empathy, making him popular with classmates and adults alike. Isabella proved to be every bit as spirited as Logan had predicted. At age 10, she was already showing signs of artistic talent that rivaled Sophie's, filling sketchbooks with elaborate drawings of the cafe, the neighborhood, and fantastical scenes from her imagination. She had also inherited her parents' stubborn streak and her father's ability to charm her way out of trouble. The cafe had become a landmark, featured in guidebooks and food blogs as a must-visit Brooklyn establishment. Emily had written a cookbook featuring the recipes she'd developed over the years, with proceeds going to a scholarship fund for young entrepreneurs. Logan's legitimate businesses had grown into a small empire of construction, import, and restaurant ventures, all operating with the same attention to community benefit that had transformed his reputation. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Logan surprised Emily with a trip to Italy. It was their first vacation without the children, who stayed with Sophie, now a successful artist with her own gallery, in the apartment above the cafe. They spent 2 weeks exploring the villages where Logan's grandparents had been born, eating authentic Italian food, and rediscovering each other away from the demands of daily life. It was during this trip that Emily realized how completely Logan had healed from his traumatic childhood. He spoke freely about his family history, both the darkness and the few bright spots, without the tension that had once accompanied such conversations. I used to hate being Italian, Logan confessed one evening as they sat on the terrace of their hotel overlooking the Mediterranean. It was all tied up with my father's world, the violence, the tradition of sons following fathers into crime. And now? Emily asked, sipping the local wine and watching the sunset paint the water gold. Now I understand that being Italian is about family, food, art, beauty, all the things I love most. My father perverted it, but he didn't own it. Emily smiled, thinking of how Mickey and Isabella had embraced their Italian heritage, learning the language, cooking traditional foods, and taking pride in their family's legitimate accomplishments. The kids love their Italian lessons, Emily said. Mickey wants to study international business in college so he can expand your companies into European markets. Logan laughed. Of course he does. That boy has been planning business strategies since he was 5. And Isabella wants to study art in Florence, Emily continued. She says she wants to paint like Sophie, but with more Italian flair, whatever that means. It means she wants to paint with passion and drama, Logan said. She's definitely my daughter. They returned from Italy refreshed and more in love than ever. The cafe welcomed them back with a celebration organized by their staff and regular customers. Even Detective Martinez, now retired but still living in the neighborhood, stopped by to welcome them home. Life settled back into its comfortable rhythm, but Emily found herself thinking more about the future. Mickey would graduate high school in 2 years, Isabella was becoming more independent every day, and Emily was beginning to imagine what the next phase of their lives might look like. The answer came unexpectedly on a quiet Tuesday morning in autumn. Emily was reviewing inventory when Logan appeared at the cafe, earlier than usual and with an expression she couldn't quite read. We need to talk, he said, and Emily's heart skipped with familiar anxiety. They retreated to the back office, where Logan closed the door and turned to face her with serious blue eyes. "I got a call this morning," he began, "from a federal prosecutor. They want to offer me a consulting position." Emily blinked in surprise. Consulting on what? Organized crime cases. Specifically, helping them understand how modern crime families operate, how to identify legitimate businesses versus fronts, how to approach prosecutions that actually break up criminal organizations instead of just cutting off heads that grow back. Emily stared at him, trying to process this unexpected development. "They want you to help them prosecute people like you used to be." "Yes," Logan said simply. "And before you ask yes, it would mean testifying in some cases. It would mean putting my name and face on public records as someone who cooperated with federal law enforcement." The implications hit Emily immediately. "That's incredibly dangerous. Even if you're legitimate now, there are people who would see that as betrayal." Logan nodded grimly. "There are risks. But Emily, I've spent the past 12 years building a legitimate life, proving that people can change. This could be my chance to help other people make that same choice." Emily sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was proposing. "What did you tell them?" "That I needed to discuss it with my family, that I wouldn't make a decision that put you and the children at risk without everyone understanding what we were choosing." Emily appreciated his consideration, but she also knew Logan well enough to recognize when he'd already made up his mind. "You want to do it," she said. "I want to do something that matters," Logan replied. "I want Mickey and Isabella to be proud of what their father contributed to the world. And I want other people in my old position to see that there's a path out, that they can choose something better." That evening, Logan explained the situation to Mickey and Isabella over dinner. Emily watched their children process the information with the seriousness it deserved. "Would it be dangerous?" Isabella asked, her young face creased with worry. "There would be some risk," Logan admitted. "But we have good security, good relationships with law enforcement, and most importantly, we have each other." Mickey, now 16 and possessed of his father's analytical mind, asked the practical questions. "How long would the consulting position last? Would you have to travel? Would it interfere with your other businesses?" Logan answered each question honestly, painting a realistic picture of what their lives might look like if he accepted the position. Finally, Isabella asked the question that cut to the heart of the matter. "Papa, do you think it's the right thing to do?" Logan looked at his daughter, then at his son, then at Emily. "I think it's the brave thing to do. Whether it's the right thing, that's something we have to decide together, as a family." The discussion continued over several days. They talked through the practical concerns, the safety issues, and the potential impact on their community. Sophie weighed in with her characteristic directness, pointing out that Logan had already proven his transformation and didn't need to risk his family's safety to prove anything to anyone else. But Emily found herself thinking about the young women and men who might be trapped in criminal organizations, believing they had no choice but to follow the path laid out by their families. She thought about the prosecutors struggling to break cycles of violence and the community suffering under the weight of organized crime. "If you were still that young man your father groomed to take over the business," Emily asked Logan one night, "and someone had offered you a way out, shown you that change was possible, would you have taken it?" Logan considered the question seriously. "Maybe. If I'd believed it was real, if I'd seen proof that someone like me could build something legitimate and still be respected." "Then you have your answer," Emily said softly. Logan accepted the consulting position, and their lives changed in ways both subtle and profound. He worked closely with federal prosecutors on cases involving organized crime, providing insights that helped them build stronger cases and identify opportunities for offering defendants alternatives to prosecution if they were willing to leave criminal organizations. The work was meaningful but challenging, but Logan struggled with the ethical complexities of helping prosecute people who reminded him of his younger self, while Emily worried about the long-term implications of his very public cooperation with law enforcement. but the positive impacts were undeniable. Logan's work contributed to the successful prosecution of several major crime figures and the establishment of programs that helped lower-level criminals transition to legitimate livelihoods. His story became a case study in criminal justice reform, proof that the cycle of inherited criminality could be broken. Mickey graduated high school with honors and was accepted to Columbia University's business school. Isabella continued to excel in her art, winning several regional competitions and catching the attention of prestigious art programs. As their children prepared to leave for college, Emily and Logan found themselves facing an empty nest for the first time in their marriage. But instead of sadness, they felt excitement about the next chapter of their lives. "What do you want to do now?" Emily asked one evening as they sat in the cafe after hours. "We've raised our children, built our businesses, contributed to our community. What's next for Emily and Logan Moretti?" Logan smiled, the expression lighting up his face in the way that still made Emily's heart skip after all these years. "I want to keep falling in love with you," he said simply. "I want to travel more, maybe write a book about second chances. I want to spoil our grandchildren and teach them how to make proper espresso." "Grandchildren?" Emily laughed. "Mickey's only 18 and Isabella's 14. Let's not rush them." "I'm a patient man," Logan replied. "I've learned that the best things are worth waiting for." Emily reached across the table to take his hand, her wedding ring catching the soft light from the street lamp outside. "Do you ever regret it? The choices you made, the life you gave up?" Logan lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles gently. "Emily, the life I gave up was empty. It was built on fear and maintained through violence. What I have now, you, our children, this community, the chance to help other people find their way out of darkness, this is what I was meant to build. Even if it meant starting over? Even if it meant admitting you were wrong about everything you thought was important?" "Especially because of that," Logan said firmly. "The strongest people aren't the ones who never fall down, Emily. They're the ones who get back up and choose to become something better." Outside, Brooklyn settled into its nightly quiet, the kind of peaceful silence that spoke of safety and community. Inside Carter's Coffee, Emily and Logan Moretti sat together as they had countless times before. Two people who had found each other across an impossible divide and built something beautiful from the fragments of their separate pasts. The neon sign flickered gently in the window, casting warm light onto the empty street. Tomorrow would bring new customers, new challenges, new opportunities to serve their community. Mickey would call from college, Isabella would show them her latest artwork, and life would continue in all its complicated, beautiful ordinariness. But tonight there was just the two of them, a shared cup of coffee, and the quiet satisfaction of a love story that had defied every odd and expectation. "One last coffee?" Logan asked, echoing the words that had started everything between them. Emily smiled, understanding as she always did that it wasn't really about the coffee. It was about the choice to begin again, every day with the person you loved. "Always," she replied. "One last coffee, and then another, and then another, for the rest of our lives." And in the warm glow of Carter's Coffee, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built together, Logan Moretti leaned across the table to kiss his wife, tasting the future on her lips and knowing that the best part of their story was still being written. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.